real estate has never been more popular, Jamie, and there's lots of changes coming to Greater Vancouver, and so we're just going to chat quickly about a couple headlines that have hit media outlets in the last couple weeks. Density has been a big topic over the last couple years in Greater Vancouver, with the new announcements to municipalities increasing density on single-family lots. Burnaby, we did a podcast on Burnaby and what their changes are. Were one of the first to announce. Surrey has recently brought out their new zoning. A lot of municipalities have asked for extensions because June 30th was the timeline. Yeah. So we don't really have like a ton more to update on other than Surrey's been announced. But a lot of municipalities are still wanting more time.
I think West Vancouver, Coquitlam, I believe North Van. But yeah, there are certain cities that just aren't ready yet. And even the ones that are, it's a little bit uncertain how, I mean, the stories you hear is like Burnaby, for example, that is a little more proactive with this, but they've, to counter the increased density, they've countered that with increased development charges as well, which makes the development less appealing. Now, when you're building a tower, an increased development charge per unit can be substantial. When you're going from a single family home to a fourplex, it may not be as impactful.
Yeah.
And the missing middle housing, the fourplex, the threeplex, the townhouse, the row house, that sort of 1,300 to 2,000 square foot family type of dwelling is what the city needs most. So I'm overall still pumped about this development change, but it's also happening at a time with high interest rates and no builders and investors really buying right now, or developers buying right now. But I do feel that in the years ahead, we are going to see some pretty amazing, 3, 4, 6 plexes coming up in the city. To get there though, Denny, right now we're in the weeds of cities not liking the change being forced on them by the province.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff that I've looked at isn't really that clear. I took a peek at the Surrey density link that they have to kind of show how the new zoning. So all these cities are simplifying their zoning. And I mean, one thing that kind of just stood out to me is not everything's 4 to 6 units. Not everything is there in Surrey. It's a little backwards to me, but if you have a lot over 4,050 square meters, which is a large lot, I think it's, or maybe it's, sorry, I'm butchering it. Basically it's around an acre, a little bit more than an acre. Okay. So I think I have one extra zero. I don't think it's 4,000. I think it's 4. It might be.
An acre is like 43,000 square feet-ish.
Ignore the measurement. The larger lots in our zoning in Surrey allow for max 2 units, and some of the smaller ones are max 4 or 3. And it's because of the proximity to the Skytrain. So ultimately, it's a very big city that's confusing. And when you look at the zoning chart and how it gives away density, it's not clear on why a larger lot would have less units and why a smaller lot would have more units, because it's kind of backwards from what I normally see. But in that case, I believe it's just proximity to transit. All in all, I don't know the development charges in Surrey. I don't know how those are changing. And I don't know how say, the houses along the future Skytrain or current Skytrain are doing differently than, say, houses in Panorama Ridge that are large lots and around nothing, from a rapid transit area. So Surrey aside, Burnaby aside, the cities that have a little more proactive, a little more transparent zoning released, still looks a little bit confusing to me. Still doesn't really show 4 to 6 units, no problem. The development charges could discourage any development. And the sentiment I get from a lot of councillors in cities that not that I know a lot of them, but I've definitely been to a few council meetings and talked with city officials on this, and it's not very positive, not a warm welcoming. I mean, I went to the first council meeting in New West that discussed this, and it was not, let's bring on density, let's embrace this change. No, it was more seen as, we are meeting our housing requirements. We don't need this in our lives, and this takes away leverage from negotiating on developments with developers. I know, Denny, density is going to be in the news for the next year. I was hoping to have clarity on how this would all unravel by now, but with cities asking for extensions, with the stuff that's released not being overly clear, I think it's going to be a few more months before I wrap my head around this whole what the city might look like in the future.
Even with the circles, the transit-oriented development areas, like I haven't really seen a lot on that's giving people clarity that yes, when you're within 800 meters of whatever Skytrain in Burnaby, New West, Port Moody, doesn't matter, that you're gonna get 12 stories or whatever they've announced.
I think it's going to take time.
Yeah.
I think what we're going to see is years of overpriced land assemblies. If you're a developer, are you really trying to assemble land right now, or are you trying to get a distressed site right now that someone else doesn't want? I think there's probably more opportunity in distress than assembly.
Sure.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things I saw this past week was the city councilors of Vancouver voted 6-0 to bring the density to Shaugnessy.
There
was a lot of pushback from different neighborhoods in Greater Vancouver, Shaugnessy being one of them, Queen's Park and
should probably just touch on that. Shaugnessy, large lots, 100-year-old homes, historic neighborhood, very expensive real estate, very wealthy people. Probably don't want to see that mansion across the street being chopped up into 6 units. Yeah. But that's exactly what happened. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's just curious to see obviously we do a lot in New West, and Queen's Park is an area that has heritage restrictions. And how is this density going to be adjusted in an area like that? Shaugnessy was another one that had question marks and had residents, a lot of pushback from residents to city council. And this is, I guess, the first announcement of an area like that. And the city council said, we don't care. We want more density there.
Yeah, to talk about what I think it is, and like Queen's Park, New Westminster is a heritage conservation neighborhood, and I think my guess is that's similar to what Shaugnessy is trying to achieve. And when I went to the council meeting on that topic, a heritage conservation neighborhood is not exempt from the density change. A heritage home, a heritage registered home, is exempt. If it's a heritage protected home, it's under its own rules. It's legally protected. You may not be able to convert that to a 3, 4-plex, or 6-plex. But if it's just an old home, even in a conservation neighborhood, you might, in Queen's Park, for example, might have to meet the design guidelines to have a curb appeal that matches the neighborhood, but they can't restrict you from doing 3, 4 units or whatever the provincial, however this will settle out. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the exact same thing for Shaugnessy. Yeah. One thing that I really am curious to see how it unfolds is right now in Vancouver and potentially some other cities, there's a penalty in terms of floor space ratio or developable area when you tear down an older home. So, if you want to redevelop a 100-year-old home, you need to go through potentially a heritage assessment. But it's not always clear whether when you buy it, without that heritage assessment, you don't know if it's a valued heritage home or not, or if it has heritage merit or not. Mm-hmm. But in Vancouver, if you knock down, or if you had vacant land or knock down, call it a 1950s home, you would get a higher buildable area than if you knock down a 1920s or 1910 home. And I don't see how any zoning or any zoning that penalizes buildable area, I don't see how that lives in this new world. There's zoning, half of New West is zoned where they penalize you, they count cellar space, which is basements fully below ground, and it reduces how much you can build in your total height. So half of New West is NR1 zoned, where basement cellar space, if your basement is no more than 1 meter above ground, it's exempt from the floor space ratio. But the other half of New West is not. So you have an incentive. In one half of New West, you have an incentive to build a basement. The other one, you don't. And if a basement's fully underground and it's matching the footprint of the main floor, it is adding livable space, adding future basement suites, adding future housing, adding more housing space for families. It shouldn't be penalized. So, density is going to be, I think, a conversation we're going to be talking about for a while. And I think we're probably a year or two away from the actual wave of builders, small scale builders and developers going after this stuff. Yeah.
My other favorite headline this past week was City of Vancouver again. Gas is back. They
welcome back, probably natural gas. Yeah, well, we missed you for that
big comeback
blip. Which is needed. It's great that there's a push to go full electric, but the world's not ready for full electric yet. Neither are our electrical panels.
We've done podcasts on step code, and getting to this, whatever is the maximum, step code 5.
Yeah, passive,
that is like passive home, fully electric. This obviously doesn't allow you to get there anymore, and a lot of municipalities were pushing up that ladder of step code 3, 4, 5, right?
Yes.
So does this hold back, or does this eliminate step code 5?
Not 3, 5 potentially. I mean, I think 5 was basically you. I think you almost want to be able to get close to being off the grid in some way. Like you're fully electric, but you're also not using a lot of power, and it's a really well sealed up home with high R value, high insulation value, very efficient systems, minimized windows. But I don't know if natural gas is in that fine print in any way, shape, or form. So, but the big thing about natural gas, aside from step code, the step code thing's a bit ridiculous. It makes building very expensive, and it was forcing full electric. And when you have a single family home with a suite, and you have car chargers, and you have full electric, you don't fit all that on a 200 amp service, especially if you want a hot tub. But I don't think councils are worried about hot tubs. So but like dryers, 2 kitchens, all the EV chargers, all these take up power. Even one thing that's not talked about as much as it could be is a lot of townhouses out there have 100 amp services. And technically it's against electrical code to put in a proper car charger on those 100 amp services. So developers are advertising them as EV ready, but you're kind of doing something that's not today's building code to do it. So I think all in all, the change is, my guess is they listened to some electricians, realized what people want in homes, and realized it's not feasible if you want full electric. A 200 amp service is not going to service a typical home under these new requirements. Especially if your heating system has to be electric. I sold a home in North Van where it has this 100 amp breaker designated to their heating system. And that's huge. That's half of your 200 amp service, right?
Wow.
So, natural gas is needed. And maybe this gets reversed down the road. But in a world of a lot of electric chargers, a lot of electric cars coming out of nowhere, and if everyone's getting basement suites and electric dryers, you got to have some. Natural gas could be a dryer. Natural gas could be a range. Heating system. Those things can alleviate a lot of power. And also, right now, it is cheaper to run these items on natural gas than electricity. So I think it's okay to live in a world where, yes, your car is electric and certain things are electric in your house, but furnace can be natural gas. If you like to cook with it, if you like a fireplace, the electric fireplaces are stupid in my opinion. So looking at electric flame is not the same as looking at a gas flame. Maybe not go over. I imagine the city's not. I imagine they're going to have some restrictions around natural gas, but once you have a natural gas line go into your house, you kind of can do anything after you own it. Yeah. Well, congrats to Vancouver. I think this is a good move. Yeah.
That's all for now.
That's it.
Beauty.